spiritual sense, is it because you have a religious gene?
Well, I don't exactly know what the relationship is between religion per se and genetics. I do know that, and this is something I think Dawkins never addresses at all, is that we absolutely know, as much as we know anything as scientists, that religious ritual and practice is a human universal. It's as universal as food sharing, for example, which is a very fundamental human trait. Now, Dawkins, at least in principle, believes that natural selection worked to facilitate the transfer of behavioral patterns and actions and so forth that were conducive to long-term survival. And yet he doesn't seem to extend any consideration of the fact that if evolution crafted people, so to speak, to be intensely religious in their general demeanor, that probably served some fundamental purpose. So I wouldn't say that we have a religious gene, but I don't think it's actually possible for people to exist without being religious, and I think that people have always been religious. And it's a biological phenomenon as well as a spiritual phenomenon, I suppose.
Just got an email at tvo.org, and Shabir Ali, I'll get you to react to this. Let's bring this up if we can, Michael. My impression, the author says, is that people often bring their own agendas to their religious or secular faiths, some using them to justify horrific acts, and others deriving from them the strength to do extraordinary good. People seem to be born with certain positive and negative inclinations, which are then enhanced or mitigated by experience. Sometimes religion and or other ideologies make them better people, and sometimes people use them to rationalize horrendous acts. An intangible God may be the source of goodness, but the record of codified religions and other ideologies is a lot more mixed. Is religion merely a vast canvas on which we paint our various behaviors?
I don't think so. I think to a certain extent that happens. People bring their own agendas and they use religion as the window through which they accomplish what they want to achieve. But on the other hand, religion vastly motivates people towards good. The author of that question points out that we all have the capacity for both good and evil. Or some people, the author thinks some people have the capacity for some and some for others. The Quran teaches that in fact we all have the capacity for both good and evil. God has so infused that into us as a basic possibility. And then it is up to us which possibility of the two we wish to develop and grow with. So when we talk about genes and the possibility that we have a religious gene, to me the two are not alternatives, that either this or that. To me, God creates through what we are now describing as the evolutionary process. And if we can find certain genes or something in our past that explains to a certain degree how we are behaving now, that does not exclude God from the whole process. It is God who to us sees through this entire process and makes what is possible actually come to fruition and become a reality.
Nada?
Yes. Here I'd like to take on something that Dawkins says, where he says we cannot critique religion, and that religion puts itself beyond critique and demands blind faith. No, this is precisely where one has to be critical of one's own religious practice, because you can misuse and abuse anything, politics, religion, science, for evil purposes. Think of what Mengele did with science. But a good religion helps you, guides you, and enhances the life-giving aspects of it. And so it is your responsibility as a religious person both to critique your own religious practice and to have a prophetic critique of your own community.
Can I ask you, as a representative of your faith, obviously, is Dawkins right when he says there is a kind of a prohibition on criticizing religion, and that's part of what's wrong with the religion?
Well, certainly that's a negative aspect of religion, and that certainly will have to change. Religious people will have to become more accustomed to listening to others. And in fact, if one were to go back to our Islamic roots, one would find that right in the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, this was going on. People were criticizing Muhammad. They were calling him a liar, a maniac, a demon-possessed. They said his Quran is a concoction of ancient tales. But that doesn't stop the flow of religion when God wants to make his truth manifest. So atheists will continue to survive and to doubt. There will always be skeptics, but that's the way God has created his world, with a variety of people, some who will be believers and some who will be not.
Okay, Jordan?
Dawkins is a proponent of active debate, and so I guess one of the things I'd like to say about what I learned from reading his books is that I think he does one thing that's intellectually dishonest in his discussions, and one thing that's actually predicated on a rather profound ignorance. The intellectually dishonest aspect of his arguments is that the religious belief that he sets up as an enemy, so to speak, as the thing to be brought down, is an extraordinarily simple-minded construction. And it's linked to his error of ignorance. In his last book, The God Delusion, Dawkins doesn't cite a single source that I would consider a reliable intellectual a provider of religious knowledge or psychology of religion. None. And his attitude towards art and religion and psychoanalysis and the unconscious and all the things that have kind of to do with the romantic aspect of existence are equally vanished. And in terms of a kind of lack of internal reflection, one of the things that was so striking about listening to Dawkins talk was that when he defined what he thought a good God should want, he said two things. He said a good God should want people to love him and to love their fellow people. And Christ said in the Sermon on the Mount that if you took all the wisdom of the Old Testament and boiled it down into two phrases and had to define God's wish for a relationship with people, that's exactly what he would want. And if Dawkins thinks that he conjured that out of thin air without being influenced by 2,000 years of Christian moral tradition, then he's just not thinking. And, you know, he talks about the zeitgeist, you know, the spirit of the times. I mean, even when Dawkins is describing the transmission of morality, he consciously or unconsciously is forced to utilize terms that are associated with religion. Zeitgeist means spirit of the times.
Let me follow up on the, you mentioned the word love. I want to follow up with you, Nada, because in the London debate that we mentioned at the beginning of the program, someone suggested that to argue for a world without religion is the same thing as arguing for a world without love. And Dawkins, I think, would say that love can exist between lovers or parents and children and that kind of thing without the benefit of religious faith. Who's more right?
Well, love is the basis of religious faith. And if you have religion without love, then you do not have, I would say, true religion, because religion has no claim outside its God. And love will exist because grace will exist. And God is still God. I mean, if you had a world per impossibile that had no religion, everything would be the same in the sense, you know, people often say if there were no religion, there'd be no religious wars, the Serbs and the Croats get along. I'm part Serb. We would not get along. You know, if they couldn't argue with somebody on the basis of religion, they'd fight about something else.
Does it bother you, though, that you can't prove God's existence?
No.
Why doesn't that bother you?
Because it's not a matter of proving to you. That is the whole point of a religion that's grounded in inner integrity. It's a kind of knowledge and integrity that is inner. And this is the whole part of religion he misses. Clearly, his notion of religion is something that's imposed from outside, and he says, he quotes Voltaire at one point, if you can make someone believe in absurdity, you can make them commit an atrocity. So it's about believing absurdities. What religion is at the high end, not just the mediocrity of, you know, ordinary kind of partial belief, is the religion of the saints and the sages, which is something that can be beyond the zeitgeist. People who stand up for human rights, animal rights, or something at a time when nobody else is. People have an extraordinary capacity for love, for courage, for self-sacrifice. You know, Maximilian Kolbe willingly dying for somebody in Auschwitz when he didn't have to.
But he says that doesn't come from religion.
It did for Kolbe.
Okay.
Well, he does
Jordan?
it all the time. Like